Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Bear Grylls Martin.
And I'm Chief Executive Officer of all things horror, Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, tonight we are reviewing a new Sam Raimi movie. And it's kind of funny. I was looking before we did the podcast. Like, obviously, in the horror community, we all know Sam Raimi's name. If you don't, what rock are you living under? But Sam Raimi doesn't direct a lot of things. He's not like the most active director in the world. So we are doing a Sam Raimi movie tonight.
Damon finally getting a Sam Raimi movie on the damn podcast. Send Help released in January of 2026, starring the likes of Emma Raimi as River, Dennis Haysbert as Franklin, Adil Ismail as Zuri, and starring Dylan O'Brien as Bradley and Rachel McAdams as Linda. As you mentioned, Damon, written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift and directed by Sam Raimi. Send Help is a story of an employee and her insufferable boss becoming stranded on a desert island, the only survivors of a plane crash. Here they must overcome past grievances and work together to survive. Will they make it out alive, Damon? Send Help.
So I gotta say, like, we always do a spoiler section and a non-spoiler section. I'll be honest, like, we can talk about the vast majority of this movie with spoilers because the concept is baked into the actual premise of the movie. You know, like, if you've seen the trailer, you know that there is a browbeaten woman working in an office who's getting overlooked for a promotion, and her asshole, insufferable boss just doesn't appreciate her, and they end up going on like a corporate trip, and they get crash landed into a island, and they're the only two survivors. And clearly, she's the one who knows what she's doing, and her boss knows absolutely nothing. And that's kind of the premise of this movie. You watch the trailer, that's exactly what it tells you. You read anything on the actual, the website about the movie, that's what's going to tell you. So, yeah, so we're not like a lot of this movie we could talk about with spoilers because there's not really spoilers because you kind of know what you're getting into.
Premise wise, yeah, there's no secret to this movie. The premise is what it is, and they deliver on that absolutely. There's some like I would say this movie is classified much closer to the thriller genre than the horror genre, but as far as I'm concerned, thriller and horrors belong together. They are part of the same team. They are under the same umbrella. We've talked about a couple of different thrillers on this podcast before. The Rose Glass movie, the last one that she did. Gosh, why can't I remember it?
Are you talking about? Oh my God! You just got my.
I know. Yeah, the one Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien.
Yeah.
We've talked about that one. We've talked about Manhunter. We Silence of the Lambs is a fantastic thriller. It's a great horror too, by the way. It's very much a chamber horror, a hammer horror in its own respect. And this is sort of a survivalist horror, and that's exactly what you're going to get here. But it comes from the mind of Sam Raimi. So you go, well, okay, Sam Raimi. And by the way, this is something I did not know. And if you did not hear in the intro, the writers, Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, no strangers to horror, Damon. They wrote Freddy versus Jason, which you and I absolutely love. And you can go back and listen to that episode and hear us praise that movie upside down because they really nailed it. It's actually a great Freddy movie. If people don't realize Freddy versus Jason's a Freddy movie that has Jason in it. I thought it was really one of the best amalgamations of those two franchises slammed together. They also did the Friday the 13th remake, which a lot of people really, really love. And it sort of harkens back to everything that was great about Friday the 13th and far less of the fluff, and more of just getting to it. So these guys, no strangers to horror. Sam Raimi, I mean, a horror king. If truth be told, people live and die by Evil Dead. He created this phenomenon that is Evil Dead. This franchise that's, by the way, is still going strong. We're getting not one but two movies in the next few years from the Evil Dead franchise. It does not quit. Sam Raimi and the guys who wrote Freddy versus Jason, sign me up, Damon. Like put me down. 2 tickets, please. 2 first class private plane tickets across the Indian Ocean to see Send Help. I wanted to know what it was all about. I got to go to a early screening. Shout out to San Diego Goth Collective who actually put that together, and I was able to go see it a day early. And it's always great to see these kind of movies with a crowd. Like this is 100% a theater experience movie. I got to sit in the great Dolby Theater over at the AMC. Lovely, big, comfortable seats that recline, and it rattles. The the screen looks beautiful. The sound is amazing. You want to see a movie like this on a big screen. This is a popcorn movie. You got some choices to make this weekend. Make Send Help one of your choices. I'm not telling you that it's like my favorite movie of the year. I'm telling you that if you want to have a lot of fun with a movie, you are going to have fun with Send Help.
There's a influencer I follow on TikTok. I think her name is Jessica Cruz. I think she goes by J Stubes. She's one of the bigger reviewers over there on TikTok. She does like everything. She's not just horror. She does like all kinds of regular filming, regular films as
So
well.
like me on TikTok, just not pop, just like popular, and I'm not popular.
No, you're much more popular than I am. But she reviews everything, and she had reviewed this one before I saw it. I didn't watch the whole review because I kind of tend to avoid that. But without knowing what she was talking about, she's like, do the filmmakers know it's January? Because January is generally where films go to die. And
Right.
she's like, we are now 2 films into January, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, and now Send Help. And these are two phenomenal films. Now, at that point, I liked it and scrolled past. I'll go back and visit it probably tonight because I like her reviews. Um, but I was like, yeah, because we talked about that with 28 years later, The Bone Temple. We're like, this shouldn't be as good as it is. January is where films go to die. Like, that's generally what, like, studios release films in January when they're like, yeah, we know we're not going to make any money. It's probably not going to get received very well. So here, we'll just dump it here. And over the last couple of years, we've had a couple of good, I remember Megan was one, the original Megan, not the sequel. When we watched that, we are like, wow, this is like surprisingly a pretty good movie for what is supposed to be just like a random release in January. Of course, then they followed that up with what was that? What was that? Swim? Was it not Swim Fan?
Oh, Night Swim. Oh God.
That is an example of a movie coming out in January that's meant to just die at the box office. But Send Help is like, it's got legit movie stars. Rachel McAdams is a legit movie star, and Dylan O'Brien is pretty well known. And of course, Sam Raimi in the horror community. I mean, who doesn't know Sam Raimi? So I was a little surprised that this was coming out in January, to be honest with you. And then, like I said, I'd heard good things, and I went into night not knowing anything, but I do know from seeing the trailer. I can't remember when I saw the trailer first. One of the random movies I've seen, the last couple months. I was like, this looks interesting. I like isolated horror on a desert island, stranded. And yeah, you're right. It looks more like a thriller than a straight up horror film. But I was intrigued. I was intrigued, but it didn't seem like the totally most original concept, but it looked fun. And when you can blend together horror and thriller and some comedy and some good, and you have good chemistry in your leads, you're ahead of the game. And when I read up on this, when I found out that the writers were Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, who had done Freddy vs. Jason and the Friday the 13th remake, which are both incredibly well done films, I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm all the way in. And as much as people in the horror community adore Sam Raimi, and I'm about to lose half our audience by saying this, I'm not like a huge Sam Raimi guy. I like Sam Raimi. Like, he's made movies I really like. Like, I've said this on the podcast before. I stand by this. I'm not a huge Evil Dead guy. I like goofy horror that's so goofy it's funny, but not really meant to be comedy. That doesn't really do it for me. I've never really been a huge fan of those films, and I know that's kind of what Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are built around. Now, I know they got a little bit more money for Army of Darkness, and Evil Dead Rise was incredible. I loved that film. That was in my top 5 that year. But that's not a Sam Raimi film. He produced it, but he didn't direct it. And then I look back at his filmography and I was like, all right, Spider-Man 2, one of the greatest superhero films ever made. He directed The Gift with Kate Blanchett, which I actually really like that movie. It's a thriller. It's a bit of a supernatural thriller, but it's very much more thriller. That's a fun movie. But he doesn't direct a lot. Darkman, there's another one I like of his. So I do like some of his stuff. Weirdly, not like the straight up horror stuff he's done, which is odd because he's best known for horror. But I know, but he doesn't direct a lot. So my thought was going into this, like, he had to see something in this script to want to actually direct it himself. Because what Sam Raimi does a lot right now is delegating and producing. He's like, hey, I found this script, I really like it. Let my production company produce it, which is fine. But I was like, he actually wanted to direct this, so I feel like there's got to be something here. There was, Patrick. Like, it's a super tight movie. It's well written, it's well executed, and like I always say, and I know this is cheating, but when you can have Rachel McAdams, who is an incredible actor, when you can have her leading your film, you've already beaten a lot of people because you're getting an incredibly well known, incredibly good actor in your lead role, and she kills it in this movie.
I'm right there with you with regards to Sam Raimi. I know everybody in the horror community worships at the altar of Raimi. Like the Evil Dead movies are okay. I much more prefer Fede Alvarez's remake to any of the other Evil Dead movies. And like right behind it would probably be Evil Dead Rise, another movie that Sam Raimi didn't direct. Outside of that, I'm with you. Like it's kind of more of his like funner fare that I'm into rather than the horror stuff. I did not like Drag Me to Hell at all. And I just like I didn't like it, and by the end I hated it. I was like, wow, like this is going from bad to worse for me. So the batting average was pretty low for horror movies, but Spider-Man 2, killer movie, man. Really love it. But Doctor Strange too, not so much. I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. It was. I'm never like super excited to see a Sam Raimi movie, but I'm well aware of his influence. I'm well aware of his influence as a producer, which needs to be recognized. I think he's far more prolific as a producer than he's ever been as a director. He's somebody who's championing projects constantly. He's always on top of projects. And I have a feeling that when this came across his desk, he already had Rachel McAdams in his coffers because they had worked together a little bit on Doctor Strange. And so he was just like, if I can get her to be in this movie and we could maybe go film it in Hawaii or something, that idea of like filming somewhere you'd actually like to vacation. He goes, this could be a lot of fun and it'll make sense if I direct it because I could put like a newbie in this, but I like working with Rachel and this is a nice tight script. And, I like to get my feet wet every now and then. So let's go for it. I have a feeling it kind of played out something like that, or something inside the script really spoke to him specifically. And I'm curious what that was. I haven't really seen any interviews or anything from Sam Raimi, but I have to imagine it was like the idea of being able to direct Rachel McAdams starring in your film. I think anybody would jump at the chance. She's phenomenal. She's just a very, very good actor who can absolutely lead a film. And I will say this without any spoilers. What I love about her character in this movie is you see it right there in the trailer. Someone who is in the office, who does a ton of the work, who's very good at their job, but has no idea how to be socially, she's not socially adept. She's socially inept. She really doesn't know or understand social cues. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of people, even people in the film industry, because there's a lot of eclectic people in it, relate to people like that. And Rachel McAdams, who is, in my opinion, a very graceful, eloquent, very, very well spoken and smart person, to be able to kind of play someone awkward and quirky and weird and like transform like that. I'm sure she was just like licking her chops to get at something like that. She's like, cool. I don't always need to be the smart, brooding, angry, boss bitch, I could do that any day. Like, can I get into this space where I'm uncomfortable as a human, like in a human respect, and that comes off so good in this movie. And then, of course, if you've seen the trailer, there's no spoilers to this. The tables turn when her and her asshole of a boss get stranded on this island together. It's time for her to turn the tables on him. And I love how that goes. It's really interesting, and it's a slow burn. I mean, I'm going to call this movie what it is. I think this movie's a slow burn. What it has sort of the energy and fun and pep of a Sam Raimi, and of, by the way, Damian Shannon and Mark Swift. Like just sort of the fun of it all. The fun and games are there, but it's a slow build to what you're looking for, which is a game of cat and mouse. I think of a lot of movies from the 80s that have sort of a thriller aspect to them where two people are stranded somewhere or two people are somewhere out of their own element and they kind of have to work together, but they are for sure adversaries. And you're not quite sure who's going to get the jump on who. That's very much what this movie is going to be like. So the thriller aspect of it, the tension aspect of it is there all along. Plus the fun of it. There's lots of comedy in this movie. As a director, Sam Raimi is a very animated guy. So, his camera movements are swift and fun, and he's never going to just put the camera in a sort of objective way. And he's going to make it tweaked a little bit and and very subjective to allow the audience to feel what's going on. He's very visceral in that respect. So there's a lot going for this movie. I'll be honest, it won't make my top 10 or 15 this year. I can already tell that. But is it entertaining, Damon? Yes. And every now and then we come across movies like that on this podcast where I go, you're not going to hear about this on my top 10 or top 15 later this year, unless the year really shits the bed. And I'm not trying to like insult Send Help. I'm just trying to say like it's not the kind of movie that's going to be super memorable to me down the line, but it's fun and delivers for what it is at its face.
I'll say there's a world where it could get into my top 10 or 15. I liked it like quite a bit, and I can't say how the year is going to play out right now, so it's hard to say. Like there's a lot of films I'm looking forward to, and a couple of years ago I thought Nosferatu was going to be my most anticipated film of the year, and I hated it. So you just never know how it's going to turn out. Um, here's where I think the strength in Send Help really lies. And when we get to categories, we're going to talk about best performance, but I got to give some shine right now. Chemistry is such a big deal in an isolated horror film like this. When you're basically, I mean, reality is you're dealing with two people. You're dealing with Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. You're not dealing. And yes, there are other people in this movie. Dennis Haysbert, who's a great character actor. I love him from Heat and first season of 24 and all the things he's done. He's a great actor, but he's in it for 5 minutes. Everybody else that's in this movie is in it for 5 minutes, approximately. This is a Dylan O'Brien and Rachel McAdams movie. They are spending the majority of this entire movie stuck on a deserted island together. And that doesn't work if you don't have the right kind of chemistry. And when I say chemistry, I'm not talking about like romantic chemistry or like they got heat. No, I'm talking about just being able to work well together and they play their parts effectively. And what we learned about Linda very early on is she's a very mousy, as you said, very socially awkward girl who works really hard at this company, and she's been promised a promotion, which, by the way, slight spoiler, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie, so I really promise it's not. Her new boss, Bradley, who gets anointed after his dad dies, and he basically inherits the company from his father. Did you see who was the portrait of the father in the background?
I did. Do we want to give it away here, or do we just want to tell people, hey, pay attention because there's a great little nod in the background? Yeah.
I mean, it means nothing. They never mention it again. Yeah. Yeah. It's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Of course, Bruce Campbell. Sam Raimi's favorite guy from Evil Dead. That he plays we never see him, by the way. He's never in the movie. That's why I said it's not a spoiler. It's not like he shows up like, hey, you're fucking up my company. No. But I saw his portrait hanging in the office like, hey, it's Bruce Campbell. Anyways, so Bradley is this like obnoxious like frat boy taking over a company. It reminds me like a less accentuated version of Colin Farrell from Horrible Bosses. You remember that movie, the comedy Horrible Bosses, where he comes in and he's just like, I don't care about this company. I want to milk it dry and do coke and get hookers, and like that's all he cares about. This is a less less comedic version of that. But Dylan O'Brien's character is very much like he comes in with his no socks and his shoes, and he's wanting to play with his golf buddies, and he just overlooks Linda right away. She's supposed to get a promotion. His dad promised her a promotion. He's like, it's your turn. When we get the promotions, you're going to get promoted. His son takes over, and suddenly he's like, yeah, I don't care about you. You're nothing to me. And, of course, it breaks her heart, but she's so mousy and timid, and she just doesn't have it in her to really fight about it. And he basically says, and, like I said, this doesn't ruin the movie whatsoever. He basically says, come on this retreat with us. We're going to Bangkok, and you can prove yourself. Now, in reality, he's like, I don't really care. We're just bringing her along to have her be the workhorse, and when it's all over, I'm going to fire her or whatever. Like he doesn't care about her whatsoever. But they get on this, they crash on this deserted island, and the thing you learn about Linda, because she's been living alone, she lives with a parrot, is she is obsessed with Survivor, the show Survivor. And I used to watch, I call myself Bear Grylls at the top of the show. I used to watch that show he did. Was it what's it called? Do you remember that show?
Yes, I know. I can't remember. Man versus Wild. Yeah, I used to watch that.
I watched that show obsessively. I used to love that show. And watching it told me two things. One, like, I think I could do some of the contraptions and like, some of the shit he builds. Like I'm a pretty technical guy. But when he starts eating bugs and shit, I'm like, yeah, I'm dead. Just go ahead and kill me now. There ain't no way I'm eating nasty ass insects and what, just kill me now. But but she's like a survivalist, and you see like she has books about it. Like she's just obsessed with being a survivalist. It's like she's waiting for the moment for this to happen. Like she's been preparing for this her entire life, and so when they get there, she's ready. She's like, I can fish, I can hunt, I can build shelters. She's ready, and then you've got this inept daddy's boy, frat boy, who has no business running a company, much less trying to survive on a deserted island, and he's so fish out of water. And the chemistry that they share together really builds the tension and builds the relationship in this film because she's the boss on this island and he has no idea what he's doing. He is literally like a city boy dumped into the middle of a deserted island. And by the way, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do either. By the way, I just want to be clear about this. Like, you put me on like that. Like, yeah, I could probably go foraging for fruit and I could capture water. That's probably about the extent of it. I'm not getting very far without like a little bit more help. But he's complete, and plus he has an injured leg when he gets on the islands when he falls from the plane crash. But the dynamic between those two characters is what sells this movie so well because you put somebody else in those roles, this just doesn't work. And the way that Dylan O'Brien plays such a convincing prick, and the way that Rachel McAdams has to play off of him in so many varied ways. You know, she's sympathetic, but she's also kind of like, hold on now. We're on an island here, buddy.
Yeah,
like,
we're not in the office.
We're not in the office now. We're not in the office. You're not my boss here. Okay. Like we're just two people stuck on an island right now. You're not my boss. So that dynamic really, really does shift the power dynamic between them. And it doesn't work without these two people. Like I'm sure there are two other talented actors who can pull it off, but Dylan O'Brien plays such a convincing prick and Rachel McAdams plays such a convincing kind of mousy woman who's finding her agency in this movie. Mm-hmm. It just works. It just works so well.
That's very, very astute, actually. The chemistry does matter. Like how it all plays on screen has to play on screen. You know, I would say Rachel McAdams is probably close to 50 years old. I'm not quite sure her age. And Dylan O'Brien is, I think, in his early 30s, something like that. And so there's a generational gap that has to make sense. And to me, it feels seamless, and I don't even think they really bother going into the whole age gap thing. It's just clear. It's already established there. Like it's almost like the script didn't need that moment to explain that. Yeah, there's about a 20-year difference between the two of us. Doesn't even need to be explained because you understand the character work that they're doing. And it's establishing who these people are and how they play off each other, how they fit into each other's worlds. All of that is very effortless. And again, it makes sense. It's a great writing duo. But having that duo, having Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien playing off each other so well and really having fun with what's happening on screen, not taking it too serious in the fun moments and not going too over the top in the wild moments. Like they just know how to play it just right together and play off of each other. It's so true. Just like you, Damon, I was a big I used to love watching on Discovery Channel like the survivalist shows. My favorite survivalist show was Dual Survival. Did you ever watch that show?
I did watch it. Not as obsessed with it in Man vs. Wild, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, I was so obsessed with that show because one of the guys, the guy who stayed on, they swapped out the other guys a couple times, but the one guy who stayed on was a naturalist. And his guy's name was Cody Lundeen, and he never wore shoes. That was his big thing. He's like, I don't wear shoes because the foot has to connect with the earth, so that like, very hippy dippy, everything was naturalist, and he usually had sort of like a special ops military style guy on the other side who was like, quit with that hippie bullshit, brother. I'll just do it the way I do it. You know, like that was their dynamic. And these were, you know, I'm sure a lot of it was kind of staged or a lot of it was set up for them and all that stuff. But either way, these things are really entertaining. But that dynamic, that contrasting dynamic of like a hippie and a military guy trying to work together, you can translate that same kind of contrast here. The great David Lynch, your boy, one of the masters of surrealistic cinema, always said, without contrast, you don't have a movie. If on one side and the other side things feel the same, it's not going to work. You have to have contrast. And what is that contrast in any in sort of a more general sense? It's conflict. you have to have these conflicting sides, right? So you have someone who is sort of righteous and good and does the right thing every time, but maybe isn't the slickest operator. That's Rachel McAdams. Then you have the real slick operator, the good old boy, the frat boy, the golf buddy on the other side, except that he's a shitbag. He's a fucking shitheel. You don't like working with this guy. Nobody does. In fact, he's a horrible boss almost immediately, and he establishes it very quickly. He's not going to be somebody that the company wants to enjoy. So you got these two very, very conflicting personalities that now collide and clash, and the environment that they're in changes the dynamic and the power structure very quickly, and they have to adjust to that. And that, to me, the bulk of the movie, the body of the movie, is watching that adjustment take place. Because he immediately is like, bullshit, like I'm still your boss. And this is all from the trailer too. And she's like, you're not my boss here. And I know what to do here, and you don't. So either listen to what I say, or you're gonna have hell to pay. And that plays out. That's how the movie plays out. And I don't want to get into it here, but there is sort of another side of the movie, which is like the cat and mouse game, which is kind of what starts happening after a while when their situation seems like almost helpless, when it feels like they're not really going to get out of this. Then things start to shift. And I don't want to say that things start to level out between them, but the power dynamic becomes a power struggle where you try to see if one can capture the other, one can get the best of the other, who can outsmart who. That's what you start to deal with in the body of the movie. And I think that's the kind of stuff that really keeps me on the hook.
And last thing I want to say before we get to spoilers, one thing I really liked about Sin Help in particular was we talked earlier on about like, yes, this is more thriller than horror, although there are definitely horror moments in this movie. But it's
Yes.
also really funny, and there's definitely drama. It's all executed very well. The cinematography is great. But here's what I really like about it is it does cross a lot of genres. And a lot of films try to do that, and it is hard to do. I've said on this podcast a million times, I'm an amateur screenwriter. And the one thing I know, like, I feel like I can make off the cuff funny jokes to make you laugh on this podcast, Patrick. But, like, writing it into a script, I don't ever feel like I get comedy. I just don't. And so I don't try to do it. Now, maybe I'll incidentally or accidentally write comedy into a script I'm working on, but I'm just not that way. I don't have that built in where I'm like, oh, I know this is funny. So I kind of avoid it in any script I've ever been working on. But when you can do it right, when you can add in those elements of horror and thriller and the survival nature and this kind of a two-man show or one woman one man show, and you put them in a very extreme situation, and then you dump in the elements of comedy and thriller and horror and dread, and it works so well in this movie, and that goes down to Sam Raimi's direction, Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien's acting, and the script by Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, because it's hard. It is hard to execute a movie like this. I guarantee you, there are I'm not saying like exactly like this on a deserted island, but there are other ideas that are like, oh yeah, I want to make a horror, thriller, comedy. Yeah, I want to cross like 10 different genres. Then we watch the movie, and I don't want to name names. We could probably go back in our archives. We got 300 some odd episodes at this point, and say, yeah, they tried it, and boy, did it fail. Boy, did they try to cross genres, and boy, did it fail. This one crosses a lot of genres, and it works. And I'm not here to tell you this is the best movie of the year. I agree. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's my number one movie. But it's really fun. It is harrowing at moments, and it's really well executed. And sometimes that's all you need, Patrick. You don't need a perfect film. I don't need every film to be a 5-star. I got to go on Letterboxd and bang the drum and tell everyone and their brother they got to go see this. Sometimes you just need to, I'm not saying this is any way, shape, or form the same movie, but it's when I tell people my favorite horror comedy is Zombieland. It's just a goofy, fun, zombie movie with a lot of comedy in it. It works really well, and it works well because of Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg and Emma Stone and blah, blah, blah. And it's funny and it's well executed. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you it's the greatest film ever made? I'm going to tell you, oh my God, it needs to win Oscars? No. But I enjoy it. And that's kind of what Send Help is. It's a fun popcorn thriller horror movie that's really well executed. It crosses genres really well. And it's a good night at the movies. I don't need it to be more than that.
I'm going to compare it to something that people might go, really? But like bear with me here. It's a lot like Marty Supreme. Marty Supreme handles many genres at once. It's a drama. It's very funny. There's a thriller element to it. There's sort of a heist element to it. Like there's a lot to it.
It's a sports
Send
movie.
help.
It's a sports
It's
movie.
it's just it's 100% a sports movie. On top of all of that, it's a sports movie. And Send Help is much like that. It's a multi hyphenate movie, and in the studio world, you're not supposed to pitch multi hyphenate. You're supposed to give me two things max. It's listed as a horror thriller, but it's a horror, it's a thriller, it's a comedy, it's a survival movie. It's all of those things all at once. It's really doing all those things all at once, and that really reminds me of the 1980s, Damon. Those movies, we talk about the thrillers of our day when I'm talking little kids, truth be told, when we were little kids in the 80s and early 90s, thrillers were funny. They were gruesome and gory, and the deaths were like super hardcore, and they were super dramatic, and they had real stakes. They did it all. They did everything. They didn't shirk certain things for other things, or just say, well, we only play in this pool. So like Stranger Things, for instance, we're never really going to go that far. We're not going to go too far for you. We're just going to keep it right down the middle because that's our lane and that's where we stick. It's like 80s movies were willing to go all across the board. Send Help is willing to go all across the board. And in my opinion, it delivers at a high level in all those aspects.
And you know what this? You made me think of this. I gotta say this real quick before we get to spoilers. You said 80s, and it immediately clicked in my head. And I know, much like you're talking about Marty Supreme in terms of crossing genres, you know what this is in a lot of ways? This is a classic 80s buddy comedy, like a buddy movie.
Yes.
This is Tango and Cash. This is The Last Boy Scout. This is 48 Hours. This is Lethal Weapon. Two diametrically opposing characters stuck in an untenable situation. Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy in the 48 Hours. You got a criminal working with a cop. You got Tango and Cash, which to me is a totally underrated like buddy comedy, buddy cop comedy. You got the slick, Wall Street cop of Sylvester Stallone, and you got the like kind of brash outlaw kind of cop of Kurt Russell. Lethal Weapon, same kind of thing. Danny Glover,
yes.
Button down, old school cop, and then you got fucking Murtaugh, who's a fucking psycho. It's very much that same dynamic. You just made me think of this. This is a 1980s buddy comedy movie. I call it buddy comedy. Like the duo comedy movies of that great era where they're great thrillers. They're very action packed, but the characters work so well together. And that's why I love The Last Boy Scout. I just watched that last week. Damon Wayans and Bruce Willis work so well. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Ridley Scott, so well.
Right? Yeah.
Or Tony Scott.
No, Tony Scott.
Tony Scott. Excuse me.
They work so well together. You got like a famous football player and just a down on his luck detective. That makes no sense, but when you put them together, it works. And like that's what this movie is. Just made me think of this. This is a 1980s buddy comedy movie.
It is. I mean, when I tell you this feels like a very 80s movie to me. It really, really does. Like I think for a lot of our listeners who I think skew a little bit older, at least into their mid 30s, into their 40s and 50s, like if you loved movies like that, this is what this movie's like. So you might as well go check it out. And Damon, I know we're about to get into spoilers, so I might as well tell everybody that the patrons are getting this on Thursday night. They get to hear this Thursday night. If you want to join the patrons and get yours early rather than when we typically drop on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, you go to patreon.com/rewind of the living dead to join us. It's just $5 a month. And for $5 a month, you get bonus content. You get our early drops. You get our Film Core podcast, Damon, which is our movie that's not a horror movie that we'll actually talk about. And our patrons get to vote on it. We need to put that up. Actually, that reminds me, I need to put that up maybe tonight. But join our Patreon. You can talk with me on there. I'm on there all the time talking shit with our patrons. It's a little family. It's a little family of rotten ones. So join us, patreon.com/rewind of the living dead.
And you also get some cool exclusives. We did the Oscar reactions, and we are going to be doing an Oscar night reaction when that happens in March.
Yes.
Patrick and I are Oscar whores. So we'll be doing that, and we did reviews of Alien Earth. We did reviews of It Welcome to Derry. So all kinds of cool stuff that you can't get anywhere else. By the way, that's not on a regular.
Yeah,
podcast.
that's all exclusive.
That's only on Patreon. So check it out. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. With that being said, Patrick, let's get into full spoilers now. And we already set the premise up. We're already on the island, and here is Bradley and Linda stuck on this island. And the way they interact with each other right away is pretty funny because Linda saves the day. She pulls Bradley from the muck. She helps. She wraps his leg. She gives him shelter. She gets him food and water, knowing full well like he can't do any of this on his own. And of course, Bradley, being the insufferable prick that he is, he's like, "You gotta we gotta find help, and you gotta you're my employee. Like you gotta listen to me." And she's like, nobody, no, we're not." He's like, "Well, fine, I'll do it on my own." She's like, "Great, have fun." And she goes off and she's catching fish and getting food, and he's fucking. He's sitting there with his hurt leg under some leaves, thirsty as hell, no food, and he's just like, well, shit. And so he has to basically go crawling back to Linda saying, what do you think? Can I have a second chance? And that is really how the movie plays out throughout, or at least so you think. Like you kind of think like he's kind of coming around to her way of thinking. He's gonna cater to her, and she's kind of maybe getting develop a little bit of a crush on him. Seeing like why he is a little bit charismatic, why maybe people liked him in college. I don't know, but there's always this like underlying cynicism to Bradley where it's just like he wants to get away from her. He knows like she's enjoying this. She's enjoying this power dynamic of having this leverage over him, that she is basically a survivalist, and he knows nothing of what he's doing out here. Like he's completely fish out of water, no pun intended. And he's doing everything to get away from her. But they keep going back and forth in this relationship throughout the movie, and it's pretty hilarious, but it also works really, really well. And they do dump in those harrowing moments, like when she has to kill a boar, which is pretty wild. And then they go on a hike together, and she ends up falling off a cliff, and he has to kind of save her. So they do have this like back and forth, but you can tell throughout the entire movie, she's like enjoying being like, I'm getting to finally show off what I can do. And he's like, I need to get away from this woman because now she has the power over me, and I can't handle that.
I want to back up a little bit too, because I think the trailer, anybody can watch out. It's a very simple trailer. And it really sets up the whole movie for you easily. And what you see in the trailer is basically their office dynamic. And in that office dynamic, she is expected, now that the new that Bradley has become the new president of the company, she's expecting to get a promotion to vice president of whatever it is that they're doing. I think she's in account. I can't remember exactly. Oh,
Strategy and planning. How can you forget that?
I know, strategy and planning. Exactly. But the whole point is he's going to give it to his frat buddy from college who has no clue how to do the work. She's doing all the work. The frat buddy's taking the credit. And he's basically planning to just let her do all the work and they take all the credit and have all the fun. And she's not going to get that promotion. She's going to stay right where she is. And he establishes, even in the trailer, like, I think you're gross. I don't really like you. We don't really want you around, but you want to, quote unquote, prove me wrong. He really just wants to take her along so they don't screw up this acquisition that they're doing in Thailand. That's all. He's just trying to save his own ass. He doesn't really care about her. He's not really planning to give her a shot. And the hammer really comes down on that plane right before the plane goes down. His frat buddy shows Bradley this video of her Survivor audition tape. Now, this has become the stuff of legends. Is people making their Survivor audition tapes to show they have what it takes to be on Survivor. And hers is very cringy. She's sort of a geeky, mousy woman, and nothing about the video says I'm cool or interesting. It says I'm a giant nerd is what it says.
She needed Patrick Garrett to come in and direct her shit is what I'm saying here. She needs you to come in and save the day.
Quality of the video low, but there's only so much you can do because there's no charisma behind it. That's the problem. She's not charismatic.
There's no path in this movie, Patrick. She does not have the charisma of the path. The great short film that you made. She needed some path in her. I'm just saying.
Just saying, by the way, the Path just so I could toot my own horn, playing at the Sacramento Film Fest as we speak, by the way. The Path is all around the country, all around the world, already played on 3 different continents. I'm just saying. Anyway, the Path at your favorite film festival. What I loved about this moment on the plane is that in that moment, they're watching and laughing at her Survivor tape. But this is the first time you really understand that she knows what she's doing. Now, in a classic 80s movie, you'd have a montage that shows somebody learning how to become a survivalist. Even in Castaway, like Tom Hanks has to kind of grow into that aspect. This movie says we don't have time for that. This movie's not about that. Let's just show that she's good at it. How do we do it efficiently? And if you're a writer or a burgeoning writer and want to learn, that's a great and efficient scene to show she knows everything. You don't even need to do a montage where it shows her learning to tie stuff and learning to fish and learning to do that. They're watching a video and it shows the dynamic between these executives and Linda. They think she's a joke. They're watching her Survivor tape going, look at this absolute nerd. Meanwhile, on the tape, you're seeing all the things she already knows how to do. You don't have to do that later. When the plane crashes and they get onto the island, she's like, oh shit, I'm in my element. I trained for this. But they hid that exposition in that little scene where they're making fun of her. It's one of these nerdy geeky things on my side where I was like, that's a smart way to establish her character. That's a smart way to show that once we are on this island, we don't need to spend any time explaining how she knows how to do this shit. We get right to it. So when that plane crashes and they're in the water and they have this great harrowing sequence, great Sam Raimi sequence where the waves are crashing and the lightning striking and the rain is pouring and she's trying to, survive in this storm. And a body comes up out of nowhere and scares her and shit like that. It's really great, really dynamic shit. Once they are on that island, there is no time wasted. Bradley is stitched up. He's under a perfectly formed lean-to shed. She's already creating things to capture water. She's already creating shelter. She's already creating tools. You don't need to waste any time. You understand that once they land there, the tables have turned. She is now in charge immediately. And she's not only is she in charge, she's in charge based on the thing they were just making fun of her for. They were just shitting on her for having this dorky tape that showed how great she would be at Survivor. Well, now who's laughing? She is, because she's got all the power. Now, where this movie, I think, really starts to turn, and I'll toss it over to you, Damon, because this is what I love, is that this is now time for her to actually assert herself in a way that she has never been able to do back home. As she's a mousy woman, she's kind of beaten down by life and by people who are more braggadocious and more charismatic than her. But now she is actually going to get some character growth because she's in her element where she is in charge. And this man can't even overpower her if he tried because his leg is busted. So she is truly in control and she can truly psychologically put him in a position where she goes, no, I'm sorry, I'm in charge here. Do you understand that? Do you understand how this is going to work? I'm going to be in charge. And the great twist of all of it, Damon, is that she starts to abuse that power. And she starts to become obsessed with it. There are reasons. They get into all this, but that's what makes this movie become interesting. And that's where this movie turns from, oh, it's like you're saying, like a two-hander buddy cop movie into, are we in misery right now? Maybe we're in that movie. And I love that turn. I love that dynamic turn for her character.
What I really love about that, and to expand on what you're saying, is that her twist into like this, like, I'm the boss, I'm the captain now, to quote Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
I'm the captain now, but she's never done it in like a truly maniacal way.
Right.
Which I think makes the dynamic that much better. Like, there's no moment where he pisses her off and she kicks his wounded leg.
Right.
She never goes full Kathy Bates of misery, but she's teetering. She's teetering on that, and you see it. She's like, when Bradley becomes a total asshole and she's just like, good, fend for yourself. She never kicks him out. He goes on his own. He's like, I'm out of here. I can do it. She's like, great, have fun. And he's built his little half shelter and he's trying to hide under it. And he looks over and she's built a full shelter. She's eating fruit and fish and having full meals and water. And he's over there basically licking the ground for water because he can't do anything. But she never exerts herself on him in that way. She never comes over and kicks out his tree stand or, kicks his leg and says, what do? You can't live without me. She makes him crawl back to her. That's the power dynamic switching. And he comes back and he's just like, hey, didn't we meet at the Christmas party last year or something? She said to him in the office, and he had no memory of meeting her. And he's
Yeah.
like, did we meet in the Christmas party? She's like, yes, we did. He's like, hi, I'm Bradley. Tries to play a little bit of the little charming little swagger of like
Hmm.
what he probably did when he was trying to dupe girls in college. And he, turns on the charm a little bit. Then she eventually turns on. She's like, sure, okay, you can come back, have some dinner. He's
Oh,
fat. He's
Damon,
so
just
happy.
don't skip this one part because I love it, Damon. I'll just add to it and I'll throw it right
No,
back to you. Back in the office when she was trying to argue the fact that she needed the position, she walks in on him conducting an interview with a very young, beautiful woman, and he goes, "Well, it kind of depends on what you'd be willing to do for me." And the implication is obviously maybe some sexual favors, and I'll see where I can put you in the company. Is the implication? And in that moment, when he came crawling back to her, she used the line right back to him. I fucking loved that moment. And he immediately starts to undo his pants, like realizing like shit, like I feel what it's like to be put in this position where I have no power, zero ability, and I'm depending on this person who has the power. Now I know how it feels. But then she stops him. She goes, I would never do anything like that because I'm not a fucking pig. Like she didn't say it that way, but that's essentially what she's saying. It's like, I'm not an asshole that way, but now you know how it fucking feels. Fucking love that. Anyway, continue, Damon.
she turns it around on him, like everything that just like the whole Christmas party thing. She knows what he's doing. Like she's smart enough to see he's
Yeah.
trying to turn on the charm. But she lets him back into camp and he's eating, and then she goes off and kills a boar, and they're eating dinner together, and it's just like they're building rapport, and they're sharing stories about each other. He talks about she talks about her being married for 10 years and her husband dying in a car accident, things she's never told anybody before. He talks about how his parents were abusive, his mom was abusive, and he never really knew his dad growing up. And so like they're sharing real like intimate pieces of each other with their lives. And for a couple of months, you're like, wow, they're kind of getting into each other. Like this is kind of turning. And I get it; it's a little bit of the Stockholm syndrome thing where you're just around, nobody else around. You're two people in a place like this, isolated, that you're going to be kind of maybe becoming attracted to each other. But the entire time, Bradley is plotting his escape. Like at one point, he's like, "Hey, we should build a raft," and she's like, "That's a really bad idea. Like it's not going to hold together, and B, the waves are too much." She's like, "This is like that's a last resort." But he's like, "But we could get out of here." He doesn't understand like the dynamic of actually putting a raft in the middle of the fucking ocean. But he's like, "Well, we could build a raft." And then at one point, when his legs are getting better, she's like, "Hey, do you want to go exploring? I'm about to go on a hike. Do you want to go exploring around the island?" And so she takes him around, and she gets to. I mean, they go up on a giant mountaintop in the middle, like a harrowing cliff where I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm going on this hike. And that's where he saves her. She trips and like gets on a little part of the cliff, and he actually pulls her back up. So once again, they're helping each other, and he knows he's not going to make it out of here if she dies, so he has to save her. But at one point, she says to him, Bradley, over like here's this. You go over here's this, and she's like, do you see that big rock fixture over there with the big looks like an X? She's like, that is nothing but thorn bushes and briars. And she's like, you go over
Yeah.
there, you're going to be fucked up. So just avoid that part of the island. It's really dangerous. He's like, great. And he's completely fish out of water, so he has no idea. And she's like, great. And so they go back, and once again, this power dynamic continues, but they keep hinting at this flirtation between them. There's like a growing flirtation between them where she's like kind of seeing the charming part of Bradley, and he's kind of seeing another side of her where it's not this dorky, button down clad office worker who looks, very mousy. She dresses like a librarian, basically. Starts to see another side of her.
Yeah,
But
her hair becomes sort of like beachy and ocean crimped and all that stuff. She's starting to turn into a real like viscerally, like a primal woman. He's starting to see her for the powerful woman she is.
and they never, by the way, I want to mention this. Like Rachel McAdams is pretty clearly a very beautiful woman, but they never do that stupid thing they do with like those like She's All That movies where they try to dress
Yeah,
her down to make her look like she's not pretty. And you're like, hold on now, we know that's Charlize Theron. Come on, like stop trying to. But when she does have like that dynamic where she kind of lets her hair down, it's like that kind of like animal energy to her. You know what I mean? Where she
totally.
like you know what I mean? Like there's like that, and she has that. She does that very well in this movie. But like I said, throughout the entire time, you know he's getting ready to turn on her. So at one point, he's like, "Hey, I want to make you dinner." She's like, "Really?" He's like, "Oh yeah." He makes her a sushi and like a mango sauce or whatever, and then she takes a bite. And she starts feeling woozy, and you realize earlier on when she took him on that hike, she tells him like, "Don't ever eat these kind of berries if they're orange or certain colors. And if you ever need to test it, rub it on your skin. If it gets irritated, you know it's poison." Which, by the way, that's a pretty cool trick. I had no idea that was actually a thing. Learned something by watching this movie as well. She starts getting woozy and feeling nauseous, and she basically falls over sick. And you realize he poisoned her. And he runs into the woods and grabs, he's been building a raft the entire time, like when he's been kind of sneaking off on his own in the mornings and things like this. And he's like, "Ha ha, bitch, I'm out of here." And he jumps in the ocean and he gets about 10 feet out and he's like, "I'm free." And then a big wave crashes down and his shitty raft blasts apart. And he's back on the beach being saved by Linda. And I just saw this movie like 2 hours ago, so forgive me if I'm not getting the exact like moments, moment by
Sure.
moment. But there's a point where she's just like, that's where she turns full misery, where she's like, "Bradley, you've been a bad boy," more or less is what she says. She's like, "It's time to punish you, and the only way I can make you subservient to the point where you're going to understand that I'm the one in charge and you don't have any power in this is basically if you lose your balls." You need
Yeah.
to be castrated. You need to be castrated because then you're that ocean of testosterone flowing through your body that tells you you're the man, you're in charge.
Yeah.
That will go away.
After that harrowing night, when he wakes up in the morning, she's feeding him, and the food that she's feeding him is blue ring octopus, which is highly toxic, and it paralyzes him. And she puts him through the ringer like, "You now we're gonna cut your nuts off," and you're like, "Oh fuck."
And she takes his pants off and underwear, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, she's actually going to cut his balls off." And you hear her get down, blood splats over both of them, but he's paralyzed, so he can't feel any of this. He can't see, he's like staring straight ahead because everything is like paralyzed except his eyeballs. And then she pulls it up and she's killed a rat, and she's like, "Just a reminder, I'm in charge," basically is what she says.
Yeah.
So she doesn't actually cut his balls off, but she's letting him know, "You need me more than I need you, buddy." It's just a great like that, and that's where it kind of switches again, where it kind of gets into like the misery of it all, where she kind of goes like full on cuckoo, where she's like, "Okay, I've shown you kindness, I've helped you survive, I've given you food and shelter and water, and you would be dead right now if it wasn't for me, and yet you still don't appreciate me. So here's how you're going to appreciate me now. I'm going to cut your fucking balls off, and you're going to learn a lesson." Now, she doesn't, but he's obviously scared out of his mind, thinking, "Uh-oh, I am really in trouble here." Now, one little wrinkle that we haven't talked about yet is like, at one point, she just randomly shows up and she has a knife. And he's like, "Where'd you get the knife from?" She's like, "Oh, you'd be surprised what washes up on the beach." Now, Bradley's a moron, so he's like, "Oh, cool, whatever." But we find out. Should we talk about the end of the movie? Just kind of do we want to?
We should, and we should mention, this is another thing we forgot to mention, was early on in when he was still rather incapacitated, when she was on a certain side of the island, she saw a boat.
Oh,
There
yeah.
there are people around, and she was like, and she says to herself like, "It's too soon." She early on did not want to let go of the power that she had over him. And that's really important. That actually really informs a lot of what's going on over there. It's like this movie does keep it ambiguous in that respect. You want to root for her because he's the shitty boss and she was a deserving employee and she worked really hard, but she made a choice to stay on that island when she could have literally just yelled out and been like, "I'm right here." And they would have turned that boat around and they would have been saved within, I don't know, a day and a half, something like that. She chose to let that boat go by because she liked the power dynamic that she had there. She liked that she had control over him. And yeah, Damon, let's start talking about the end because I'm realizing everything we just talked about was factored into that as well, where she really wanted to play this game with him. So if it sounded like it was just kind of basically tumbling forward in a basic ABC fashion, in the back of your mind as the viewer, you were realizing, oh shit, like she is forcing this situation on him. They could have been saved and she's choosing not to. But it goes even deeper than that, Damon, because that knife belong to right where that rock looks like an X is not brambles and briars and razor wire, and razor grass and all that stuff. On the other side of that is, oh, Damon, one of the most luxurious mountainside mansions that some billionaire probably owns and just put on this private island for his own leisure when he decides to come out here. And she went into that house, and she probably goes there and takes showers. She probably goes there and, cooks food for herself, prepares food for them, whatever she needs to do. And then she comes back to their little seaside retreat, not telling him what she has.
And we did mention, I don't want this doesn't take away from the ending, but at one point, Bradley's fiance actually shows up and she actually finds them. She's like, they called up to search. We found you. And she's like, oh, and once again, Linda's like, yeah, sure. Let me take you to Bradley. And they're walking around that perilous curve on that mountainside. And of course, the fiance falls down. Her guy tries to grab her, and we don't see what happens when Linda shows back up at the beach. She's alone, so we know the fiance didn't make it. And what serves as the catalyst to the end of the movie is that Bradley finds his fiance's hand sticking up out of the sand after she walks back up on shore after she died, and he realizes that, like, she was there. Like, and he doesn't know exactly how it happened, but she knows, like, he knows there's no way Linda didn't have something to do with this. She didn't see his fiance come there to rescue him. And so they end up in this, like, really harrowing fight for survival. And as she's running away from him, that's where they run into this mansion. And we've learned later on, like, she had discovered this long time ago. That's where she got the knife, as you said. So they get to Bradley gets to this house, like, after he escapes her, he gets to the house, he's, oh, man, I'm here. He pulls in, he's drinking water, he sees all the fruit, and he opens the door to get a weapon, and all the knives are gone. And then he hears a voice come over the intercom, and she's like, Bradley, I see you. And she's in, like, the security room, and she's like, she's been setting this up. If he ever found this place, she knew, like, that's where they were. And she basically, that's where you learn that boat we saw early on in the movie was the boat taking the caretakers of this billionaire's homecoming there to, like, drop off stuff and clean up the place. They left again. But before they left, she saw the code they put into the security code. She's been going in and out of there, as you mentioned, getting food and knives or whatever she needed. And so when Bradley gets there, he's like, oh, I'm saved. I found safe haven. But then she's like, Bradley, you're not safe. And so, it kind of becomes this cat and mouse game again of, like, we are rescued, but not really, because we're not out of this shit yet. And they end up fighting again, and at the end, she ends up pulling a gun on him. She has a shotgun she's found in the house. And she's just like, Bradley, you are a piece of shit. And, like, everything I've done for you, and you don't appreciate me. And then, of course, he turns it on again, the old college boy charm. Linda, I didn't really know what I had in you. I totally appreciate you. I didn't realize until just now you're everything I've ever wanted in a woman. I love you, Linda. I love you. And then, he turns the table on her, she drops the gun. And she pauses just enough for him to get the drop on her. He gets the gun away from her, and he's like, bitch, I don't love you. You're a psycho. And he puts the shotgun on her, pulls the trigger, and nothing happens. And then Linda grabs a golf club off the wall and beats Bradley down, and he's just like, because he keeps mistakenly calling her that she's in accounting. You're just an accountant. You're just a dumb accountant. And she's like, I'm in strategy and planning, Bradley. And so when he pulls that trigger and nothing happens with the shotgun, he's like, what the fuck? She smacks him with the golf club, and she's like, strategy and planning, Bradley. This was all part of her plan. She had this all set up to know if he was going to really turn on her or not. And he did. And at that point, she's like, well, you're out of chances. You've had every chance to appreciate what I'm doing for you. You've had every chance to appreciate that I saved you, that I become your heroine. You're done, Bradley. And so she beats him with the golf club, and then one final blow, Bradley is gone. And we get to our little, I won't say it's not a post-credit scene, it's just the end of the movie.
A little epilogue, yeah.
Yeah. And she's swinging a golf club on a posh golf course somewhere, and we have to imagine, like, Hawaii or something. And they come to interview her, and they're like, we're here with Linda Little, the only survivor of the harrowing plane crash of Bangkok Flight, whatever. And her
Yeah.
new book is a bestseller and it's about to become a movie. Linda, what can you tell us? And she kind of ravels out a story. Now she's all done up. She looks beautiful and she's got the done up hair and the makeup and she's gorgeous. And she's like, I just always remember the one lesson I want to impart upon everybody in the world is, no one's coming to help you. You have to be able to survive on your own. And she smiles and winks, and she drives off in her posh car, $1 million car, listening to one way or another the song she tried to get her friends, or she tried to get the coworkers back in the cubicle world. That was her favorite karaoke song. She's driving off with her bird, listening to one way or another, and she's rich and famous, and she was the only survivor of this harrowing island incident in this plane crash. It's such a good ending. Like, I think that really, like, we've talked about movies like this before, not like this, but like just movies in general. A bad ending can just ruin a movie. A
Yeah.
movie can be solid, 7 out of 10, however you want to rate it. But a bad ending just ruins it. This movie is made better by the ending because they do twist it and turn it. You're like, at one point he jabs her in the fucking eye. And it looks like he's going to dig her eye out of her head. You're like, oh my God. Like, it looks like he's going to get over on her. And then when she drops the shotgun, because once again, they're setting up this dynamic of like, I love you, Linda. And it seems like she's falling for it. Because, like, she does, like, kind of have this, like, she has this power dynamic, but there's, like, a little bit of attraction there. And she just wants to be loved. More than it's not really about Bradley. Linda just wants to be loved. She hasn't had that in years. And so she's like, in that moment, you're like, oh my God, don't fall for this, Linda. And he grabs the gun, you're like, oh shit. And he pulls the trigger. When it goes click, you're like, oh, okay. And she's like, remember, Bradley, strategy and planning. And it's just a great ending. I love that ending.
I did like that ending, and it's, by the way, it's still like, is, is she really the good guy? Not really. She killed multiple people, by the way, to survive for no good reason other than she liked it. Like, truth be told, is that she's almost more evil than Bradley. Bradley was a shitheel, but it's like, you throw a rock and you hit a lot of shitheels like that. Throw a rock and hit somebody who can murder 3 people and not ever have to have murdered them. In fact, could have easily saved them. She's diabolical too. And now she's back in the world and now she's got a lot of influence. It's a very, not even morally ambiguous. It's morally challenging. Because obviously you wanted her to win over this guy, but the way she wins over you go, God, that's actually pretty evil when I really think about it. And back when they were sharing their stories, which again, on a writing note, another very important moment is when characters share secrets. That's the moment they begin to trust each other. And so he shares the secrets, of course, about how his father was never there and his mother was actually terrible to him. She shares that her husband was terrible to her, real bad. And one night he got super, super drunk and did some terrible things to her. And she would always hide his keys because he was a bad drunk. And that night she decided not only to give him his keys, but give him one last drink. And then he went out on the road and got killed in a car accident because he was drunk. Oh, I understand you're mad at the guy. I get it. That's probably not the thing you should do, though. You probably shouldn't let him go out on the road super drunk. He could have killed somebody else. You realize she's capable of things like this. Multiple times in the movie, they sprinkle this in where you realize she's capable of bad things. And so I just really appreciate that there's at no point in this movie am I fully rooting for her. What I'm rooting for is the best possible outcome. But we don't truly get that. We get the outcome that she wanted, strategy and planning. The strategy and plan all along was to take it all, and she took it all. And the way she took it all was using her skills and her strength and her ability to manipulate. It on its face, you would have never saw that coming when you first meet her. So the change is incredible. The change is interesting because you start with this mousy woman who's like a doormat at her office. But truth is that when you put her in the right situation, she could manipulate and be the worst possible boss from hell too if she wanted to be. She just needed the opportunity to do it. So this movie's not like the others. Sometimes it's just clear that there's a bad guy and a good guy. Not in this movie.
Well, what I love about the morally challenging part about this movie is because like the escalation of like of Linda becoming like basically a murderous psychopath at one point, like when they are rescued, like not the boat early in the movie, when Bradley's fiance and a random boat captain show up, and she's just like, I never gave up hope. We kept searching all these little islands trying to find them. And by the way, if you're out in that part of the world, there are a billion different little islands out there.
Yeah.
So like that's why it's hard to when plane crashes go down. Then like you're not going to find anybody because there's a million islands out there. She's like, I never gave up hope. I wanted to find him. And so she's like leading him back, and like rather than be rescued and reunite him with his fiance, she literally walks them into a perilous part of the mountaintop where she knows it crumbles, where she almost fell. The fiance falls, the guy tried to save her, and she basically chucked the boat over the side, and they fell to their deaths, like a brutal death. And here's where the moral, like the really morally challenging part about this works, though, is because they've to this point in the movie, there is no humanly possible way that you could like or sympathize with Bradley. He
Right.
is such a pompous dick. And like, I mean, the worst boss you could possibly imagine having. Now, I worked in a cubicle at one point. I worked at a call center. I was a supervisor. Now, luckily, most of my bosses, including my upper boss, were like incredibly nice. I had a great relationship, especially with my one boss. She was awesome. And like when I quit to go write full time, become a journalist full time, she was like in tears. She loved me. She was great. I got lucky. But I know there are plenty of people that worked in those cubicles that fucking hated their bosses. That's why I always tried to be like good to my employees, and like they would give me reviews and I would get good marks because I was like, I never want to be that kind of boss. But I know that dynamic exists where you're just like, if I had a chance to toss you off a fucking roof, I would. And that's why it challenges you as the viewer to say, like the entire movie, you're rooting for Linda. There's no way you're not rooting for Linda.
I would disagree. I would say the moment, and it's not that deep into the movie,
Well,
is
no,
when she sees the boat and does nothing. That to me was like, oh, she's made a choice here.
yeah.
And so that allows for the rest of the movie to be like, oh, okay, there's something else at play here.
But even then, like you're like, I'm with you. You're like, oh, okay, what's like really going on? But then he pulls that, makes her sick, and gets the raft. And he's like, fuck you, I'm out here. He literally leaves. It's like, fuck you, Linda. So once again, you're like, fuck this guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even in that moment, like she's turned around, she's been nice to him. Like, so they keep escalating Bradley being this total prick douchebag. But when she kills the fiance and that random guy who had nothing to do with this, and she shows back up on the shore, and she's just like, hey, and like doesn't tell him what happened. You're like, there were 3 of you 5 minutes ago. There's no longer 3 of you. We know what happened to the other 2. And then obviously we find out later on the film that she basically chucked him over the side or didn't save them. It really challenges you morally in that moment where you're like, this guy, like, in a way, you're like, this guy deserves everything he's getting. He's such a dick, and he's not learning. He's not growing. Like, she is desperate to try to make him become a better person in the way of, like, understanding, like, the way she's treating him is the way he treated her.
Right.
She treats him, she's oblivious to him just the way he was oblivious to her. She's trying in a very twisted way to teach him a lesson, yet time after time after time, you realize he's not changing. He's a dick. He is a dick. And so it's hard for you, even in those really nefarious moments where Linda has gone full, sociopath, to not root for her because Bradley is such a deplorable asshole that you're just like, yeah, kind of fuck this guy. And I'll put it to you like this, Patrick. Because I don't think you've ever worked in a cubicle like that, have you? You never worked in like that kind of office setting?
No, I work in the corporate world, but I work on the video production side of it.
So I'm going to use it. And by the way, this is not me advocating for anyone to take him to an island and chuck him off the edge, by the way. But I think we probably have a similar opinion on Elon Musk. Like, he's just very off-putting dude, right? Like, very off-putting guy.
I would hate to work for that guy. I work in tech.
Could you imagine being stuck on a fucking deserted island with that guy? And by the way,
That would be the shortest movie.
they say very specifically they're here for weeks. Like they actually say, like at one point, we've been here for 2 weeks, a month. Like they've been there for
Yeah.
weeks on end. Like this is not like a 3-day trip. Like you go mad in 3 days. No, they're saying they've been there. At this, we don't really get the total timeline, but you kind of get the idea. It's been a couple months by the end of the movie. They've been stuck on this deserted island. I don't know Elon Musk, but the little bit I do know, I would not want to be around that guy for more than about 5 minutes. Now, trap me on a deserted island with him, yeah, there's a pretty good chance someone's getting tossed off the fucking edge of a cliff. Like, so I'm just saying, like, could you imagine yourself in Linda's place being stuck with Elon Musk?
Oh God, yeah. No, I get it, and that's what I like about this movie is that neither of these characters. Like at first, I'm always on Linda's side. It's like really easy to be on Linda's side when we're back in the normal world. When we're in the upside down in the new world for the both of them, very quickly, and I think it's smartly done. I think the writing is smartly done in this respect. Is that early on that changes when she makes that choice when she's like, I could call to that boat, but I'm not gonna because I still want to do this. I still want to play this game. And it kind of reminds me of Walter White, where in the beginning of Breaking Bad, he did it to save his family because he had no insurance and no way to, he knew he was terminally ill and he was going to have nothing to leave for them. So he was like, if I start being a drug dealer, I can actually save them. And you know, because I'm just this teacher that never made any money. But by the end of Breaking Bad, he was like, honestly, I did it because I fucking loved it because it gave me the power trip that I was dying for. Because he was a doormat too. He was a guy that just got walked on. And so there, that dynamic is very similar here with Linda, where she's like, I was always a doormat. My husband ran over me. My bosses have run over me constantly. And now when I get a taste of the power, I'm fucking drunk off it. And I kind of like it. And when we could have gone away, we could have gotten away a long time ago. She probably could have put a great big distress signal up. He mentions it at one point. He goes, hey, why not put up a big distress signal? And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to help us like live, you know, so don't worry about that. She probably could have made a great one and probably would have got them found. She found that home. She could, I guarantee you there's a Starlink at that home, and she could have gotten on the internet and said, here we are, wherever the fuck this is where we are. Come save us. Hey, Bradley, come get over here and sleep in this bed tonight and we'll wait for help. She chose not to because she liked the game. She liked the game she was playing. So but actually, I'm complimenting the movie in that respect because I like that it put this like question forth. It's like, now who are you really rooting for though? Like, I'm not rooting for Bradley, but why should I root for Linda at this point?
Yeah, and you're great. You're right, because I remember hearing Vince Gilligan talk about like he said Mr. Chips to Scarface was his idea for the show. Like his really wholesome family man who gets kind of put in the worst situation possible, becoming a drug dealer. But by the end of the show, it's no longer about saving his family. It's because he becomes Heisenberg and becomes this incredibly powerful guy. He never had that kind of agency in his life, anywhere in his life. His marriage, his being a parent, being a teacher, nothing ever gave him that kind of power and that kind of boss attitude. But he sure did it when he became Heisenberg, and he's like, I like that power. And what do they say about power? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And yeah, so like I love the moral ambiguity of that, where you're like by the end, you realize like Linda's not a good person either, and she's been turned like. Granted, she's in a desperate situation, but she doesn't need to murder his fiance and the boat guy. She just doesn't want to go yet. She likes the power dynamic, and so she murders to keep her way. And obviously, at the end, she murders Bradley to be the only one who escapes this island. But that kind of like that's why this movie tests you. And by the way, it's a fun way. They're not like they don't put her. They don't make her go full Kathy Bates in Misery, where you're like, Jesus Christ, like this lady needs to go. Annie Wilkes needs to die. By the end of this movie, you're still kind of like, you know what? Bradley was a dick. Like he kind of deserved what he got. And that I think that's the brilliance of a movie like this, where like by the end, when you see her on that golf course and she's got all the success and books written and movies being made, you're kind of like, good for you, Linda. Like you're kind of looking past the fact that she just murdered 3 people and left them for dead on let their bodies for dead on the island. You're like, well, you know what? Good for you, Linda.
And isn't there a little bit of commentary there on how you really get to the top, right? You
100%.
maybe have to slit a few throats to get there, and she did, and she slit the throats. She became the person that she never intended to be, but it got her exactly all the dream success that she ever dreamed of, all the perfect life she ever did. But she had what did she have to do to get it, and how does she have to feel about it? Which is in the end, she's like, I feel pretty fucking good about it actually, and you're like, oh no, another monster is born. Like now,
That was And that was kind of the worst thing about Bradley too, because Bradley didn't even slit throats on the way to the top. He had his hand it to him, like he was just
oh
his
yeah.
father's son, and that makes him even worse because he was a dick for no reason. Like he didn't have to climb over anybody to get in this position, or he didn't have to cheat his
But
way
he
to the
wasn't
top.
killing anybody.
No,
That's
no,
the
he wasn't.
difference.
But like I said, that goes to it goes to the morality of this question. Like is that is she really the bad person, or did like she just finally get snapped and pushed over the
I,
edge by
I,
this?
I think they were both bad. She became bad. She broke bad, right? Like that's exactly what Breaking Bad's all about, right? She eventually became the bad person.
But unlike when I watch The Sopranos, which is my all-time favorite TV show, like at no point do I ever justify or sympathize with some of the terribly awful things that Tony Soprano does. It was well written, an incredible show, and James Gandolfini should have won Emmys every single year he was on that show. But I never sympathized with Tony Soprano. I was like, Tony is an evil dude, and he does some really
Yeah.
evil shit. He's just a very charismatic evil guy, very much like Walter White, like Breaking Bad, one of the greatest shows of all time. Walter White does some really nefarious, evil shit
Oh
on
yeah.
that show, and
Fucked
there's
up
no
shit.
way you're really rooting for him, but you like the character. That's the classic anti-hero, much like Dexter and so on down the line. The difference with Linda is like by the end, I'm kind of like, you know what? Good for you, Linda. Like, I'm kind of like, yeah, you had to murder some people to get here, but good for you. Patrick, let's get some categories and let's kick things off as we do each and every week on the show and talk about best performance. And well, we got two choices because there's really only two people in this movie. So, Patrick, who gets your best performance in?
Dame Damon, it goes without saying, Rachel McAdams as Linda, really, really great. As I mentioned early on, like the idea of being the socially inept, socially awkward person, the way she embodied that part of her role so well, and the way that she slowly turns to this other person by the end of the movie, even her physicality changes everything. She's just a top shelf actor. You said it yourself. It's cheat code shit when you have Rachel McAdams at the top of your movie because you know it's going to be good. You know she's going to bring things to the table and little choices here and there that are going to make this movie that much better. And I was like, wow. Anybody else in this role? I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I guess my point is that when you have someone at the level of Rachel McAdams, you can see why she makes it that much better.
And let me be clear about this. Dylan O'Brien is great in this movie. I'm not as familiar with him as I am Rachel McAdams. He was great in this movie, but I'm agreeing with you. It's Rachel McAdams because she is a tour de force in this movie. And I think part of the reason why I also give her best performance is because I've seen a lot of her work. Like I like Rachel McAdams. She's been in a lot of movies I like. She's in Wedding Crashers, which is a great comedy. She's in True Detective season 2, which is not the greatest season of that show, but I actually
Not
enjoyed
bad.
it, and I think she's really in. And just her dynamic in this movie, being able to play that kind of mousy, basically stepped on, stepped over character in the first half of the movie, and then boom, she becomes this survivalist, badass, a little bit of a sociopath in the second half of the movie. She just plays it really well, and it kind of I don't know that I haven't really seen Rachel McAdams working a lot lately. It feels like she's kind of picking and choosing her roles when she acts. This was one where I was like, oh yeah, she's fucking phenomenal. It's like I was like, oh yeah, now I remember how good Rachel McAdams is. So she also gets my best performance. Patrick, who gets your MVP for Send Help? Who is the most valuable person in this movie?
Damon, my MVP does go to Dylan O'Brien because, as you mentioned earlier, it's all about the chemistry. And if Rachel McAdams is going to play this role and is going to evolve as this character, she needs someone that is backing her up, that is complimenting her, that is contrasting her at the right times, and that's Dylan O'Brien. These two have to work together to make this thing sing. And I'm not terribly. I know who he is. I know he did the Maze Runner movies and all that stuff, and I think he was I want to say he was on MTV's Teen Wolf, if I'm not mistaken.
You might be right. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just know that I have literally been in the room with Dylan O'Brien maybe 25 times because he's always come to Comic-Con and I've shot a lot of his panels and stuff. So like I'm very familiar with the person Dylan O'Brien and less with the work. But this is exactly what this movie needed. It needed this contrast. It worked out great. He did a tremendous job.
let me pay him the ultimate compliment. If you remember, at some point on the show, I talked about when I got into the show Succession for HBO,
Yes.
and I said there's not a redeeming quality about any character on this show. Kieran Culkin and Tom and all of them. Every character on that show is like, oh my god, you're the worst people on earth. But I
Yes.
love watching you. I love watching this show. It's so well written. Even though you're the worst characters ever, I can't stop watching you. That's what Dylan O'Brien was in this movie. Like, I hated him. I hated his
Yeah.
character, but he was so good at playing that just unbelievable dick. And I'm just like, man, that takes talent. Like, like I liked him as an actor. I hated his character, but I liked him as an actor very much like watching, Matthew McFadyen play Tom Wamsgans. Like, that was my favorite character on Succession. And he was such an asshole, but I loved him. So that's very much what he is. Patrick, I gotta give some flowers and my MVP here to Sam Raimi because clearly, as I said, he's a very beloved member of the horror community. But between you and I, we're being honest, I've not really been a huge Sam Raimi guy. I actually my favorite Sam Raimi movie isn't even horror; it's Spider-Man 2, which is an
Yeah. Same.
incredible comic book movie. But I'm not a big Evil Dead guy, and I like Darkman. That's but that's more of a comic book movie as well. And I'm with you. I hated Dragged Me to Hell. I could not get into that movie whatsoever. I'm sorry. Um, but this was just like great. And like I said, I think what kind of clicked me onto this was like Sam Raimi doesn't direct a lot. He produces a lot, but he doesn't direct a lot. So he saw something in this project that made him want to direct it. And I thought he did a great job. And by the way, like a lot of the harrowing fight sequences and the survival sequences, and you're shooting on this giant island. I think they shot it probably in Hawaii. I imagine that's where a lot of these movies are shot at. It looks perfect. Like, it looks great. And I know that's also cinematography and your production designer and things like that, but I just thought Sam Raimi did a really good job here. And as a guy who's not, I'm not saying I'm not. I think he's a good. I think he's a good director. I've just not been a huge fan of a lot of his movies. This might be one of my favorites, if I'm being honest with you.
It might be one of my favorite Sam Raimi movies. That is definitely true. And I do want to also give an honorable mention, and it really shouldn't be honorable. It should be like kind of a co MVP to the writers, Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, because these ideas came, and I'm sure Raimi was working with them on set. He's very much a best idea wins kind of director. So he gets everybody together and he goes, "What do we do to make this scene the best it can possibly be?" And he green lights the best idea. I'm sure that there were times on set when they needed to problem solve, and Damian Shannon and Mark Swift were there to type something out and go, "What if we try this, try that?" And I think the foundational script that they had and the foundational idea that they had, I thought worked great, and I loved the way it escalated. I was a little, if I could be critical about this movie, I think the middle part of it was a little too much. We're playing Survivor, and it didn't ratchet up the way I would have wanted it to. It could have been a little shorter, but I do really appreciate the story arcs for the characters, how it all laid out. That comes from our writers. I think they did a great job.
And by the way, I knew because we reviewed Freddy versus Jason on here. I knew who they were, but like I just kind of forgot when I was doing my research for this movie. I was like, oh well, I have a lot of faith in this movie because these two guys did it because of the stuff they've done. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, you're right. Mark Swift and Damian Shannon deserve a lot of credit as well. Patrick, next category. Let's talk about best scare. Now, as we said, this movie is more of a thriller than straight up horror, but there are definitely horrific moments. So, what was your best scare in Send Help?
There are many legit scares in this movie at many different points, and my favorite one was Hogzilla, is what I call it, and that is when she is off looking for that wild boar, and out of the bushes comes this fucking snarling giant wild boar. By the way, Strangers Chapter 2, this is how you do it. You don't how this is how you make it happen. It was just the most insane, very Sam Raimi fight to the death between Rachel McAdams and this giant CG boar. Bloody, scary, crazy. This thing won't stop coming for her. She's stabbing the shit out of it, and it just keeps coming. She has to fucking destroy it on so many gruesome levels. It was a very Sam Raimi moment in this movie, and it worked out really great. Of course, she gets sprayed and doused in blood, and she's covered in blood while she's fighting this insanely, maybe rabid fucking hog. But it was fantastic.
Did you know Strangers Chapter 3 comes out next week? And guess who's not reviewing that movie, Patrick?
I've never even heard of Strangers Chapter 3. How about that, Damon?
Yeah. We did Strangers Chapter 2, and we're like, we can't do this anymore. It's just not, I just can't.
We just threw it out the window.
We just threw it in the towel. So Strangers Chapter 3 actually does come out next week, and I was like, yeah, I'm not seeing it. I can't do it. I can't do it again. The boar scene was great, but I'm gonna, and it did get me a little bit too. But there was one scene I went with my girlfriend, and she jumped 3 feet out of her seat when Linda's having a nightmare sequence on the beach after she offs the fiance and the boat captain, and she sees the fiance coming out of the water, and she's just like, "Why did you do that?" And of course, you realize like there's no way like she actually survived, and then she has this like harrowing encounter with the fiance, and then out of nowhere you see the zombie fiance come up behind her. She's dreaming and she wakes up from the dream. But when that zombie fiance popped up behind Linda in the dream, my girlfriend jumped 3 feet in the air. It was awesome. By the way, it was a good scare. It got me too, but she was like, "Oh shit!" Like she jumped, and I was like, "That's a perfect scare." And it did get me too. Like it was a good jolt, good jump scare. But it got her, man. It got her, and I was like, "That's the one. That's definitely the one."
You know what? Shout out to my very, very good friend, one of my best friends in the world, and the editor of both my short films that are out, Jerry Salcedo, who came with me to the screening. He jumped a fucking mile when Hogzilla burst out of the fucking jungle. He was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it was good. It was a really good scare. So yeah, both of those, and there were plenty more. By the way, there was a lot of good. The
Lots
guy
of them.
getting the guy getting chucked out the plane at the beginning of the movie was great when he's holding on. The one guy's biting his leg, and they're trying to survive. And
Yeah.
there's some good. And he's like, by the fucking window. She just closes the window on him. It's great. Patrick, next category, best gore. Now there's some surprising gore in this movie. So what gets your best gore in Send Help?
Lots of gore in this movie, but whenever there's a scene where vomit can be disgusting and funny, I gotta jump on it. And so in the scene where Bradley had already poisoned her and he's trying to get away in the raft, and he crashes and gets hurled through the waves, and he gets spit back to the shore. You think he's drowning and dying, and he's kind of washed up on the shore, and here comes poisoned Rachel McAdams trying to give him CPR and proceeds to vomit on him multiple times, like just big giant yellow green chunks of vomit spraying all over him. I was like, you know what? That's another Sam Raimi move, and I absolutely loved it.
And it's so utterly gross because at one point she gets him breathing again. He's gasping for air. So he's like, and she's like,
And she vomits right into his mouth.
it's so gross. It is so disgusting. Well, I mentioned already, I don't want to spoil it, but I did mention it already. My best gore is when Bradley's trying to jam out Linda's eye, and he
Oh
literally
God.
puts his thumb in her eye, and he's like basically digging out her eyeball. Oh man, and I've been a glasses wearer for pretty much my entire life since I was like 4 years old. There's a reason why I wear glasses. At one point, my parents tried to get me to wear contacts because I played sports, and like you gotta wear contacts. I have a thing about touching my eyes. I do not enjoy
Yeah.
touching my eyes. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just wear glasses for the rest of my life. I'll deal with it. I actually don't have really terrible, terrible vision, so I'm like, I can deal with it. But when he sticks that thumb in there and he's like trying to pry her eye out, oh man, it's just like it's like nails on a chalkboard for me.
That's a great scene because unlike a lot of the scenes where they sort of cut to the thumb already in sort of like a big bloody pool, instead they show her eyeball getting moved over by his thumb. And so what you're wondering is like, are we going to get to the point where the eyeball bursts or pops out of her face or something like that? And they just get right to the edge. So, but they're sticking on the eyeball. That's the gag part that they really want to do. And I'll give them credit for that because I think so many other movies just move to the other thing so quickly. And it's like, no, we want the tension of, is this eyeball going to pop out of the face or not?
Yeah, it's a great scene. Patrick, next category, and I want you to introduce. I'll name the category. I want you to tell what it is. Your desert island horror movies.
Damon, I figured why not be appropriate? People like to do their desert island discs for, if you were stranded on a desert island, what songs would you have to bring with you? Well, I thought this is a horror podcast. What are our desert island horror movies, Damon? And I'll go first because here I am. I'm definitely bringing Send Help, and I'll tell you why. it's got a lot of survival tactics in it, and I'm going to study those to make sure that I can survive. But at night, when I want to go to sleep, I'm definitely bringing Alien because it's, to me, one of the best movies around. And I'm also going to bring The Lost Boys because it's a great beach movie. You know, they're partying in Santa Clara, and it's just fun. It's fun. It's funny. I don't know. Lost Boys is one of the perfect movies too. So why not bring Alien and The Lost Boys along with it?
So I went with the theme of isolated horror films for my desert island films because, like right now, I'm not kidding. We just got dumped on. I'm in Ohio. We got dumped on with like 19 inches of snow the other day. So I've been snowbound for like 3 days. Just got out like yesterday. And Day After Tomorrow was on the other day. And I'm like, well, I have to watch this because it's like a good snow movie. Like I love that movie for the snow. It's cold outside. It's snowing. You need to watch Day After Tomorrow. So I kind of went with that theme. So my movies are The Descent, which we know is
Great
a movie
movie.
that is just like incredible tension, isolated horror. The Thing, which is
Great.
the greatest, in my opinion, isolated horror film maybe of all time. I'd have to really think about it, but it's right up there. And then I was trying desperately to find a good island horror film. There aren't a lot of them. Gotta
Not a
be
lot.
honest.
Club Dread.
Here's the one I found: Battle Royale.
Ah, that's a good one.
The classic Battle Royale. Kids survival, jumped on an island, having to kill each other to survive. Couldn't go better than that. Battle Royale would be my third choice. So Battle Royale, The Descent, and The Thing.
Those are great. You can't go wrong with those movies. Although The
Uh,
Descent is going to the anxiety of Descent alone, which is that's going to make me go crazy on that island.
yeah, they do. At one point, they do find a cave, and I'm like, I'm not exploring this fucking cave. I'm telling you that right now. Patrick, next category: remake, sequel, or leave it alone. Pretty self-explanatory, but if you're new here, this is where we take whatever movie we're reviewing and we say, should you remake it, should you sequelize it, or should you leave it alone? So, Patrick, when it comes to Send Help, remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
I think it's easy to call it a leave it alone type movie. Like it really works just for what it is. But I'm going to play a little game here, Damon, and say sequel because we know that what we have left Linda with is the choices that she's made. And will those choices come back to bite her in the ass? Now, it might be preposterous to have her get stranded one more time, but why not? I mean, fuck it. You know, it's kind of a fun, weird, and playful movie, but maybe it doesn't have to be a desert island this time. Maybe she's stranded in another country. Maybe she was often like, they do these remote team building exercises in places like Tasmania, which We Buried the Dead earlier, where you're just sort of stuck in a very remote part of the world and you have to find your way out of it. I would like to see what happens after this. I would like to see the Linda after this who has to come face to face with the choices that she made with maybe somebody who's just as adept at this as her. I mean, and because it's Rachel McAdams, it's like, yeah, let me see it again because I know she's like, you know what, if there's an interesting enough script, which I do believe these writers could provide, she's like, yeah, I think I could play with this because my character is carrying a lot with them from this point on. There is a whole story that's going to happen after this, but what is it going to look like?
So, my real answer is leave it alone. This is a pretty good, well done, self contained horror film or thriller film, however you want to say it. But I'll throw another wrinkle at the sequel idea because this is like it's a deserted island, people surviving a deserted island together. You got two people, and this is again very much the power dynamic that's at work in this movie. Why not do an anthology version where you just get other characters in another, and it doesn't have to be an island. They could be stranded in a marooned in Alaska, some shit like that, where they're in a frozen tundra somewhere, or a desert. They go on a hike through a desert, and please God don't turn it into the Outwaters, but like a good movie where you get lost in the desert, not a piece of shit like that. But like something like that. But then, like I said, there's a lot of different versions of this. Like this one's all about a power dynamic. There could be just a different survivalist mentality, and a different one. It could be a group. It doesn't have to be two people. You could have four people. Or you get like a situation like the plane crash, whatever movie that is, like the Andes, where they had to eat each
Right.
other, cannibalism. Maybe that's the harrowing. Is like, what are we going to do to survive? So I think you could do a Send Help too, and you don't even need to have the same character. Just put them in another harrowing situation. And like I said, you don't even have to have it to be about the power dynamic. It could be a million different versions of that. What will you do to survive, and what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? and you could do this. You could do this movie over again in a different location with different characters. So I think it's possible.
It is possible. See, weirdly, a sequel is very possible with this one.
Yeah, and like I said, but the real answer is probably leave it alone because, like I said, this is
Yeah.
good enough as it is. Patrick, next category. I'm really interested to see what your answer is for this one. Can we survive this horror film? So, Patrick, I know neither one of us are Bradley.
No.
I could be a dick. I'll fully admit I could be a dick, but I'm never going to be that big of a dick.
No.
But I'm not Linda either. I know I'm not Linda. I am not a survivalist. I am not that hero. I'm not ready for that. So somewhere in the middle, you get dumped on an island with Elon Musk. Are you surviving this horror film?
Is Elon surviving that horror film? No. Well, I'll put myself in this scenario, which is I'm on the island with Linda, and I am who I am. Can I survive it? Absolutely. Because just as you said, we're not dicks. Okay. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But we are not Bradley. And so I would be like, okay, let me know what I can do to help. Let me know what I can do. Like, I'll play the game with you. I'm going to want to get off that island for sure. And this is one thing I'm going to tell you for sure here right now. And this may be the reason why I don't survive, perhaps, as I knew when she said, don't go near that X because that's just brambles and shit. I called bullshit on that immediately. And I think anybody else understood that too. Bradley doesn't because Bradley's a real dope. But I would have been like, yeah, cool. Okay. And then one day I would go on a walk and I would go exactly where she said not to go. And I would have found what was going on. And maybe I would have called for help. Or maybe she would have been stalking me. And the minute I went in there, she would have bashed me over the head with a golf club. I'm not sure. But I can tell you this, I would not have stayed away from that X. I would have gone straight for it. I know I would have been like, that's the clue. That's the thing that she's telling me not to do. I'm definitely doing it. That might cost me my life, though, Damon. So, truth be told, it's like a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, I think I survived for a little while in the sense of I do have a little bit like I've gone hunting. I was a hunter as a kid, and I have like I said, I'm not saying I'm an expert because I watch Man versus Wild, but like I do understand like basic.
Yeah.
Basic needs of like starting a fire and things like that. Like, now am I going to go out and hunt a boar? Probably not. But I could help out a little bit in that regard. So I'll say I could survive for a little while. But much like yourself, I'm not going to want to be there forever. I'm not going to settle in like Lost where I'm like, oh, I'm on the island. Good. Let's just stay here forever. So, yeah, I kind of fall in the same situation as you are. Yes, absolutely. She points to that X side. That's exactly where I'm going to go. X marks the spot. I'm going to be there the next day. And, and by the way, I didn't know it was a luxurious home that was
Sure.
back there. I thought it was just maybe that like boat lane, like there was just multiple boats going in that same area.
Right.
And she was just trying to keep him from seeing the boat. But when it was the home, I was like, well, shit. So I don't want to duplicate your answer, but I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I feel like I could contribute probably more than Bradley did because I do have a little bit of an outdoors experience. I've gone camping plenty of times. So I do feel like I could contribute more than he did and like actually help out. But I'm going to want to get off that island. I'm not going to stay there forever. And so that's going to be the real harrowing circumstances, whether or not she's going to let me live or die or whatever. So, but like I said, maybe Rachel likes me a little bit more. And, we get a little bit, a little bounce a wow wow in the sand, something like that. So maybe, but
Wow.
otherwise,
Wow.
otherwise, yeah, I'm kind of like you. I'm like, I could be there for a while, but eventually I'm going to want to get out. And I don't know if she's going to let me go.
Yeah. Will she let you go is the grand question.
Yeah. Patrick, last category. Is it scary? So when it comes to send help, is this movie scary?
It's not really scary. It's not going to terrify you. If you are terrified of being stranded on a desert island, oh yeah, it will. But overall, no, it's not that kind of movie. It is a thriller though. And there is very much a like what is going to happen next element to it, which I really love. And there's plenty of gore, there's plenty of jump scares. It's kind of all there. It's just not packaged that way. It's not, I don't think it's packaged to frighten you, but it is packaged to make you go, "Oh, what's going to happen next?" The tension is very high in this movie.
Yeah, I would say it's a harrowing film. And I know that's kind of a weird cop out to say is it scary or not. It's a harrowing film. There's definitely moments where you're like, are they going to get out of this? Who's going to survive? Who's going to turn on who? When they finally start going after each other, is Linda going to kill Bradley? Is Bradley going to kill Linda? So there's definitely those harrowing moments. But is it a traditionally scary movie in that regard? No, it's not. It is definitely more thriller than horror, but it works. And it works really well. And by the way, this movie is also outrageously hilarious. So you're going to laugh. You're going to have some good action, some good sequences. And like I said, there's definitely some gore, some gross moments. It's just a really fun movie. And credit to Sam Raimi, credit to the writers, credit to Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. This is just a really fun hybrid movie that kind of crosses a lot of boundaries, and it's an enjoyable time at the movies.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
Send Help is in theaters right now. Go check it out while it's in theaters. We always champion the theater going experience, and I know it's cold as shit in a lot of parts of the country. Trust me, it's like -3 here right now, but I still went out and I braved it, and I had to go to the theater, and I had to see Send Help, so go see it. It's in theaters right now. As always, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Over at our YouTube channel, just search Rewind of the Living Dead on YouTube. Like and subscribe. You don't have to watch us over there. You may not want to see our faces, but it does help us a lot if you like and subscribe, so please do that as well. Also, check us out on our website, rewindofthelivingdead.com. We do put up our podcast, but we also put up trailers and reviews that aren't on the podcast, news items, all kinds of cool stuff. So check out rewindofthelivingdead.com. And as Patrick mentioned earlier, Rewind of the Living Dead is also on Patreon. It's $5 a month. It means so much to support this show. We're not doing this full time, but it really does help out the show. So patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. $5. You get early access to every episode. You also get a lot of bonus episodes, things you will not get anywhere else. No other podcast feed, just there. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review. Would you survive on an island with Elon Musk? I'd be very curious about that. Send us emails, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That is rot. livingdead@gmail.com, or find us on social media. We are on Twitter/X. Hey, Elon. We are on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram. We've been killing him off this entire podcast. So, Instagram, of course, once again, just search Rewind of the Living Dead, and you'll find us over there. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in the show. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.
Aloha.